All right, well, it's time to review a movie that has definitely existed in the ethers of awesomeness for a very long time now, since 2013, and that is the amazing Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street is a long epic of documenting the life of serial criminal scammer Jordan Belfort. And one look at Jordan Belfort in his pictures can tell you that he's the kind of guy who would scam an old lady out of 140 bucks. But The Wolf of Wall Street says a lot about human addiction and the terrifying story of having everything and losing it all, going to jail as a rich person living in opulence and then losing everything and ending up, kind of at the bottom of society. So let's dive into The Wolf of Wall Street and all of its amazingness as it kind of exists as this movie that's just this singular Martin Scorsese epic that, just came out in the mid 2010s and, is its own piece of cinema history. So, starting at the beginning, The Wolf of Wall Street is a Martin Scorsese epic starring the always dashing Leonardo DiCaprio, based on the true story of Jordan Belfort, from his rise to wealthy stockbroker, living a high life involved in crime, corruption, and all the things that go along with it, including enormous amounts of debauchery and drug use. And that's why I think is the most obvious point of The Wolf of Wall Street, is that it has a lot to do with human addiction, how power corrupts, and just generally the obsession with society and money. So, of course, the movie was based on a real story that was based on a 2007 memoir. It loosely recounts the story of Jordan Belfort and his rise to money, getting in a very complex and hard to understand way. He basically, just hustled people into believing that things were worth a lot of money that weren't worth a lot of money, and then behind their own back sold it all to make himself and his colleagues money using aggressive sales tactics. It's a very hard to understand scheme, and I've delved to the depths of Reddit and to the internet using AI and all kinds of things to kind of explain the scam, but it is a very complex scam, and it's hard to even justify how this is even illegal in the first place. I mean, obviously, when you take it at face value, he did things like money laundering and hiding his money in offshore assets like in Switzerland, and using those types of scummy tactics. But his general rise to fame of Jordan Belfort and the character Leonardo DiCaprio depicts in The Wolf of Wall Street is basically like just being a shisty salesperson. And I guess at the end of the day, as difficult as it is to understand what he actually did wrong, yeah, it probably was a pretty scummy tactic, as he basically, like this film kind of tries to show, kind of pressures people into buying penny stocks that aren't worth a lot of money, and ends up raking in money behind the scenes, kind of, by tricking people in it. And the film kind of depicts him as sort of a hero, when in reality, in the real story of Jordan Belfort, he oftentimes scammed just regular people who are confused out of their money, in a similar vein that, when you get an email saying, "I'm a Nigerian prince, send me $400,000 because you can, make $1 million off of it." It's that kind of thing. It's a very scummy tactic. You got to remember that they did this in the 90s and whatnot, when this was at the very beginning of computers. So, nowadays there's a million times different scams and tactics. But I think the movie's biggest point is what it talks about with human addiction. The movie glamorizes drug use. In fact, the movie is actually more about Jordan Belfort's obsession with drug use as opposed to, just him becoming money. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where he kind of highlights that the most his greatest addiction is money. Meanwhile, he's using drugs while doing it. So it's like it's that juxtaposition in today's world and addiction in general is that you get money, you get the women, you get the drugs, like it's all just one cycle, and that's kind of what the movie tries to portray. The movie is also a very terrifying story of going from having everything to basically being caught committing a massive crime and going to jail. A story that is probably played out a billion times around the world, whereas, people basically like Jordan Belfort had a lot of money, had a lot of friends, had a lot of cash, had a lot of fun in life, and it all stopped the moment that the FBI caught on to his little plan, and from there everything went down. Now, in the real story of Jordan Belfort, he basically is, he's still, doing motivational speakers. He's getting lots of deals. He's making lots of money. So, I mean, at the end of the day, he didn't absolutely lose everything and end up on the street, but certainly he went through a period of loss in his life, and that only basically got 22 months in jail, which in the grand scheme of everything he did is generally nothing. But still, he spent those 22 months in jail, and that must have been heartache for a person who had everything at one point. The entire story, too, probably was embellished a little bit, given the fact that Jordan Belfort himself was a liar and a con man. But his wife said that the accounts of the movie are mostly true. And he actually crashed a helicopter while high on drugs. And it wasn't really in the movie, which is a super crazy part of his story that wasn't even in that. So I can only imagine the things that the real Jordan Belfort got up behind the scenes that wasn't included in the movie, and vice versa, because it's obviously a highly embellished and glamorized story. Another massive highlight for me is Jon Bernthal. Now, Jon Bernthal in 2013 wasn't as, he'd just come off the highs of Walking Dead, but he wasn't overly known. And man, he's awesome in this. He plays like this Quaalude dealer dude who's just like living in the hood, and he's all badass, but he's rubbing shoulders with these mega rich stockbrokers, and he just gives the entire air of the movie, gives off plays kind of the perfect Jon Bernthal movie of kind of just this gangster living down and out. Also, rest in peace, Rob Reiner, as it never even really hit me the fact that he's a central figure on this, playing Max Belford, Jordan's father, and he's like side by side and running out. So, I mean, I'm sure Rob Reiner has an extensive career, but rest in peace, because yeah, he's a central figure in this movie, which is quite interesting. Of course, the legendary Leonardo DiCaprio is fantastic as Jordan Belfort. He really morphs into the role, and given the fact of that Leonardo DiCaprio in real life is a extremely rich person and has gotten to live that high life, he knows how to express himself in these situations, and basically, he just fits the role perfectly. And despite the fact of Leonardo DiCaprio being like one of the most famous actors of all time, I actually think that Martin Scorsese's casting of Leo in this role is utterly perfect, because he just he feels like that kind of person who would do the kinds of no disrespect to Leo, but he almost feels like he's definitely a type of person who would do such a thing and live such a life. The movie unbelievably has the world record for the most F words in the movie, with 569 times the F word is used, which is an incredible record. Another interesting segment of it is that the real Jordan Belfort got his inspiration from Tommy Chong to write his book during a 9-month prison sentence that Tommy was in for selling drug paraphernalia. So you got like the king of pot mixed with the king of all this other stuff. I'm sure he was into as well. But yeah, it really links up the most mellow guy with the most high strung guy in prison, which is a very interesting correlation. And that's where the real Jordan Belfort got his idea for writing the book and memoir, which led to the movie. A very interesting anecdote for Wolf of Wall Street is its ungodly lack of wokeness. Now, 2013 was a little bit ago, so I mean, this was not in the 2019s, the 2020s of when we really started to see this, type of stuff get, pushed on media. And if you look through the cast of Wolf of Wall Street and you watch the movie, now it's based on a time period a lot different than now, the 90s kind of thing. Uh, you're seeing a different time period, obviously, and Martin Scorsese nails that. But dear God, you go through the cast, there's not a single black person. And if you watch the movie as well, you'll look through the background characters, I guess, and there's a couple black women strippers in scenes, and maybe one or two in the stock brokerage world, and like here and there, but I mean generally the movie is like 99% white, and there's not a whole lot of anything else, messaging, political, anti-Trump, and there's nothing in this, which is hilarious. One of the scenes hilariously takes place at Trump Tower, and you actually see like Trump Tower as Leonardo DiCaprio is getting it on with Naomi coming out of the thing there. And Margot Robbie, geez, she almost looks like a different. It's hard to even recognize her in this because she's just like done up like perfectly, and it's easy to see watching A Wolf of Wall Street how Margot Robbie got her fame and fortune and whatnot, because when you watch this movie, I mean, she's just like the perfect bombshell, and she's a great link for Leo, who's also in that league. And yeah, like a lot of Martin Scorsese movies, it basically the whole movie is a good, everything's going well for him. He's living the high life and everything is good. And then in the last like, half an hour, 45 minutes of the movie, things start to take a darker turn. Very dark scenes with Leo and Naomi when he's basically abusive, and he's going off the rails and he's losing everything, and he's just breaking down. It does have some tragedy to it, despite being known as basically this wild out there party movie. And we cannot talk about the movie without the lemon scene. Now, around the end of the movie, there's a scene that is very long and drawn out that's quite interesting, that has to do with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill's character, Donny Azoff, who's like his closest companion, coming across these like bottle of Quaaludes that's like super high potency, the best of them. And essentially what happens is they take them and they have a delayed fuse, and so they decide to take more, blah, blah, blah. And they just kick in when Leo's at this, like, you know, like country club thing. And he's like waddling through the parking lot and thinking he's not crashing his car, but he's really breaking it. And the whole scene, and then eventually Jonah Hill like chokes on a thing and he spits it out. It's a very captivating scene, long drawn out, beautifully, incredible scene. It's just, you really gotta wonder how it affects you like that, because as a person who has definitely lived the depths of the party life, I can honestly say I've never tried them. But if I can only imagine what it feels like to be in the depth spiral of that, whatever trip or whatever you're experiencing on them. And man, it looks like their just motor functions are completely off the wall, and he can't even barely like move or get up. It doesn't look enjoyable at all, but I mean that is the pretty much the essence of drug use, isn't it? So yeah, I mean that's a pretty generalized look at the Wolf of Wall Street. It's a very unique movie. There's no Wolf of Wall Street 2, although the fact Jordan Belfort is still going along nowadays with one of his crypto wallets was stolen and he lost like 400 grand off crypto. So the real Jordan Belfort is still going strong. He does like seminars. He still seems like a very shisty person. I would have it hard to believe that Jordan Belfort is a completely reformed human being, given the fact that he did just a little over a year and a half in prison, general, despite all the restitutions and stuff he has to pay, and probably still under the radars of all the law enforcement. But he, yeah, his saga is still going on to this day because, yeah, I mean, he's 60-year-old former, one of the greatest scammers, Wolf of Wall Street himself. Yeah, so I mean, the story of Jordan Belfort isn't over, and so technically, the Wolf of Wall Street still goes on. But the movie itself, 2013, is a fantastic little movie, and I always find it entertaining to watch due to the sheer debauchery and the accuracy in which it portrays this dingy, high life. Well, I wouldn't call it so much dingy. It's a high life type of situation, which I'm sure that plenty of people watching the movie kind of were like, yeah, that might be something I would want to do too in real life, until they got to the part where the FBI, Chandler, gets him. Like, yeah. So I mean, yeah, obviously The Wolf of Wall Street is a great movie and a grand movie. I would call it a thorough 9 out of 10 material, although depending on how you watch it, it's certainly one of the best just random, you know, dark movies of the high life of, Wall Street. And you know what, for that you can't miss.